Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. President Reagan was routed today in his first veto showdown with the new Congress. The House voted overwhelmingly, Democrats and Republicans, to override Mr. Reagan's veto of the Clean Water Bill. The Senate is expected to make the override final. Mr. Reagan has tried to kill the Clean Water Bill twice with vetoes. The bill provides money for sewage treatment and other water pollution cleanup programs. The president's battle with Congress came amid continuing reports of rising disarray inside the White House and another departure today from Mr. Reagan's own inner circle. This time, former Richard Nixon and Spiro Agnew advisor Pat Buchanan. Bill Plant reports.
Say it like it really is, Pat Buchanan.
Patrick Buchanan, the impassioned, outspoken conservative who has served as the president's communications director for the past 2 years, resigned to focus on the politics of 1988. Buchanan was best known recently for his attacks on Republicans who didn't rally behind Mr. Reagan in the Iran-Contra scandal. Buchanan is the latest in a long string of top officials departing for various reasons as the Reagan administration heads into its last 2 years. They include CIA Director William Casey, spokesman Larry Speakes, and political director Mitch Daniels. Also rumored to be considering leaving are Assistant Secretary of Defense Richard Pearl and Budget Director James Miller. White House officials acknowledge these departures leave an impression of disarray. Former officials now on the outside are more blunt.
Oh, I think there's no question there's a perception that the White House is not on top of the agenda. But it might have happened if things would have gone along the normal course of events anyways in the last 2 years.
Even as Mr. Reagan playfully tossed a snowball today at the White House, the frustrations of his lame duck status were demonstrated on Capitol Hill as the House voted by a huge margin to override Mr. Reagan's veto of the Clean Water Bill. The Senate is expected to do the same tomorrow, handing the president a defeat in the first major legislative test of the new Congress.
It proves that he's out of touch. The vote is just so overwhelming that his own party is saying that he's wrong.
The president's advisors were torn between vetoing something as politically potent as the Clean Water Bill and not taking a firm stand against the new Democratic majority in Congress. Critics say Mr. Reagan will need better advice than he's been getting if he's to avoid more such defeats in his last 2 years. Bill Plant, CBS News, the White House.
From California, CBS News correspondent John Blackstone has been investigating the issues at stake in the Clean Water Bill and how the outcome may affect your drinking water.
Clean water in the United States has become more expensive than gasoline. The Sierra Water Company in Sacramento sells bottled water for almost $1 a gallon, 2,000 times the cost of tap water. But Sierra water and tap water in Sacramento come from the same place, the polluted Sacramento River. The river winds through the rice-growing fields of California's Central Valley. Weed killers have run off into the river in such large amounts that people in Sacramento can taste them, even smell them in the city's water.
So when you turn that water tap on in the morning, there's no doubt in your mind that there's a rice herbicide in it.
Contamination by agricultural chemicals like those found in the Sacramento River is one target of the $18 billion Clean Water Act. But the president of Sierra Water says he already has a solution to the problem. It costs 1.5 cents a gallon.
We would run it through sand and gravel and activated charcoal filters.
Sierra can do that because it sells a gallon of water for almost $1. But the city of Sacramento can't because it sells a gallon of water for 1/20th of a cent.
We do have low water rates, no doubt about it. But a rate increase is just something that's very unpalatable.
The rice farmers say they can't grow their crop without the chemicals. So it seems clear to many that the farmers should pay.
That's part of the cost of them doing business, and it's part of the consumer's cost when they buy the rice to pay the cost necessary to keep the water clean.
The debate in Sacramento is much like the debate between the president and Congress over the Clean Water Act. How will Americans pay for clean water? Through the products they buy, through the water they buy, or through the taxes they pay. John Blackstone, CBS News, Sacramento.
The House adjourned for today without a final vote on whether to back hefty pay raises for Congress. 3,000 top federal officials and federal judges. Under a complicated arrangement, technically, the pay raises now take effect tomorrow automatically since the House didn't block them. However, there's talk now that the House will vote eventually to rescind these pay raises for everyone except the federal judges. By law, once a federal judge gets a pay increase, it cannot be rescinded. President Reagan today talked up the idea of actually deploying Phase 1 of his Strategic Defense Initiative, better known as the Star Wars missile defense. This is sure to touch off another fight with Congress. Defense Department correspondent David Martin reports it's already touched off another squabble among the president's own advisors.
A rocket hitting a rocket. It's the most basic kind of Star Wars defense against nuclear missiles. Today, President Reagan told congressional leaders he has all but made up his mind to give the Pentagon the go-ahead to start building this first phase of his Strategic Defense Initiative.
I think the President supports at least the deployment of an early phase, and I would conclude from that he must feel that we can do that without getting in the way of arms control.
How would that work? This afternoon, Defense Secretary Weinberger went to the White House armed with arguments to overcome opponents of early deployment.
Enormous progress in the program, much more than we anticipated. The President has more options.
Afterwards, Secretary of State Schultz did not seem convinced that Star Wars is ready to be deployed.
I don't have any sense that there is something in the parking lot that you can decide about.
The State Department opposes early deployment on the grounds that it would violate the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty and set off a new cycle in the arms race. That is only one of the objections some Democrats in Congress have.
It would break the bank. It would not make us any safer. It would not work, in my view. It would be outmoded technology, and the Congress is not going to go along with it.
2, 1. The U.S. took another step in the arms race today by conducting an underground nuclear test. At the arms control talks in Geneva, the chief Soviet negotiator warned that Moscow would now end its 18-month moratorium on nuclear testing. Pentagon officials say no final decisions were made today, but they claim that with the president leaning their way, work on a partial Star Wars defense will begin before Ronald Reagan leaves office. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Another U.S. big-ticket item scheduled to be put in orbit in the 1990s, the U.S. space station may be in more trouble. NASA said today that the $8 billion space station is more likely to cost $13 billion and might have to be delayed and cut back. Also, a Congressional Budget Office report due out tomorrow reportedly lists canceling the space station and scrapping plans to replace the destroyed Space Shuttle Challenger as possible options for reducing the federal budget deficit. NASA Director James Fletcher today called these options unthinkable. The Senate voted today let states raise the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit to 65 on rural interstate highways. This is included in the Senate's version of a multi-billion-dollar federal highway bill, a bill that gives aid to the states for roads and bridges. But the whole bill is now in jeopardy. There's strong opposition in the House to raising the speed limit. Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, babies for sale from El Salvador, why the price may be paid in heartbreak. And you could have bought this gem at auction for $10 last year. It might cost you $6 million this week.
As much as I'd like to take credit for Mazda's success, it's really cars like this 626 sedan that deserve the credit. When I recommend one, people are quick to see why it's such a perfect family car. It's got a versatile interior, great seats too. But it also has all the credentials of a road car. I'll tell you, people sure don't mind hearing it's thousands less than the average new car today either.
Jimmy, I knew you'd forget to tell him about the trunk.
Oh, yes, it's got a nice trunk.
Nice big trunk.
Nice big trunk.
Oh, a headache now. Anybody seen my extra strength Bufferin?
Yeah, my shoulder hurt. And Kim took it. Sore leg.
It'll help that. Kim, got my Bufferin?
Steve does. Got a backache moving scenery.
They all know how good my Bufferin is.
Extra strength Bufferin for Steve's backache, Kim's legs, John's shoulder, Debbie's headache. It goes to where you hurt fast with an extra strength dose of relief.
Curtain going up.
And I'm ready.
For headaches and a lot more, extra strength Bufferin, also in regular strength from Bristol-Myers.
The U.S. Defense Department says 5 American ships and 1,900 Marines sailed from Spain today. Sources said they will join a flotilla of some 25 ships near the coast of Lebanon, where 8 American hostages are under threats of death. More on the Middle East confrontation now from Doug Tunnell in Syria.
In West Beirut today, angry students demanded that the hostages be freed and called a general strike that all but closed down the city's Muslim neighborhoods. Kidnappers released this photograph of American hostage Alan Steen and said they will execute him, an Indian hostage, and 2 other Americans next Monday unless their demands are met. And on nearby Cyprus, more Americans arrived from Lebanon, forced out by fear like refugees. There are signs that America's enemies in Lebanon are moving beyond mere protest demonstrations toward a showdown with the United States.
They are now encouraged because Mr. Reagan has sent such arms a weapon to Iran.
Long before the number of Western hostages in Lebanon more than doubled in just 3 weeks, there had been warnings.
By it becoming known that arms have been delivered or money has been paid in the past, this can only encourage hostage-taking.
For Terry Waite, who has now been missing in Lebanon for 15 days, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. American policy in the Gulf War has angered Iraq and incensed Iran, even within recent weeks, increasing the dangers for Americans in the Middle East, according to some of the Islamic Republic's allies. Libya's second-in-command, Abdel Salim Jaloud, told CBS News that a January 23rd White House statement condemning Iranian gains on the battlefield may have been the reason 3 more Americans were kidnapped in Lebanon 2 days later.
Which, that's a main reason? I think the main reason. It is the main reason which had led to the recent kidnapping in Lebanon.
2 U.S. Navy battle groups, a Marine assault force, and a contingent of Navy commandos are near the coast of Lebanon tonight, even though the administration called their presence only a precaution.
They're not there as a threat to anyone. Certainly not as a threat to anyone who is acting in the civilized way.
As the threatened execution of 3 innocent Americans moved one day closer today, there was no sign of anyone pulling back. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Damascus.
Iran confirmed today it has arrested American reporter Gerald Seib, calling him an Israeli spy. The United States has demanded his release. The Israeli government today began what it called its own investigation into how and why so many U.S. arms got to Iran. It comes just a few days after a U.S. Senate committee report said Israeli leaders initiated some of the U.S. arms sales to the Khomeini government and suggested diverting the profits to the Contras. Bob Simon reports from Tel Aviv.
The 2 Israelis in the center of the scandal went to testify today. David Kimchi, ex-foreign ministry official, former Mossad agent. Amiram Nir, the prime minister's advisor on counterterrorism, who repeated to the parliament committee today his contention that Israel was not involved in the Contra connection. No money, no guns. A contention supported unequivocally by Defense Minister Rabin.
Israel has not given to the Contras, or in the Contras' hands, there is no arms that came from Israel.
Not true, says a member of parliament. The Contras came to Israel last year, he says. They sent an envoy asking for arms which the Contras claimed they'd paid for years ago.
Israel did send a quantity of weapons to the Contras. I suppose that this was the result of the Israeli officials accepting the argument of the Contras envoy, and that's why the shipment was made.
The Prime Minister's advisors admit that the official Israeli version isn't standing up all that well, and they really want Prime Minister Shamir to know the full story before he leaves for Washington in 2 weeks. But officials in Jerusalem still insist that whatever the Israelis did, they were only helping out a friend.
In other words, Israel isn't even an equal partner here. We are totally secondary and subsidiary to a basic policy decision by the United States.
Officially, Jerusalem still stands behind Amiram Nir and his denials. Unofficially, the knives are drawn, and high-ranking officials are quite prepared to leave him twisting slowly in the wind. Bob Simon, CBS News, Jerusalem.
Ferdinand Marcos kept his appointment today for a physical examination at a U.S. Army base in Hawaii. The Justice Department wants to determine if Marcos is well enough to testify in an investigation of illegal use of U.S. military aid. Marcos had been arguing that he was too sick to testify, but that was before his workout video surfaced last week. Marcos made the tape to show his friends in the Philippines that he is not sick at all.
Say, these must be Jack's new Canon personal copiers. Great color.
Yeah, and they copy in 5. You want to see?
Go ahead. Make my day.
Everything you need to copy with is in this replaceable cartridge.
I'll do that.
Good thing Canon has PCs for every personality, even pushy agents.
Lighten up, Jack.
These new Canon personal copiers are light. Put one in my car.
What a guy.
Personal copiers for every personality. For information, call toll-free 1-800-OK-Canon.
Now, colorful stain and tough polyurethane protection in one. Polyshades by Minwax for a beautiful finish in half the time.
Minwax makes wood beautiful.
We asked 1,000 doctors if stranded on an island, which would they want? Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol, Advil, or Bayer? More doctors chose Bayer, nearly 2 to 1 over extra strength Tylenol. Bayer, the wonder drug that works wonders.
The U.S. government reported today that its main measure of future economic activity jumped 2.1% in December, biggest increase in almost 4 years for the index of leading indicators. Analysts caution that much of the increase resulted from a year-end rush to beat new and less favorable tax rules. The Census Bureau said today the average single-family home sold for a record $111,800 last year. The report said home sales rose 8.9% for 1986. The average price was up almost $12,000 per home over 1985. In El Paso today, an immigration official said all illegal aliens applying for amnesty will have to take a blood test for AIDS. Until now, the test for the AIDS antibody has been required only for blood donors. That may change even further. CBS News correspondent David Dow reports how and why.
The Centers for Disease Control is considering a call for routine testing of all patients admitted to hospitals and couples applying for marriage licenses. The proposals are bound to trigger debate among those worried about their ethical and social implications and others who think more extensive AIDS testing is essential.
So far as curbing the further spread, this is very desperately needed. This epidemic has spread with enormous rapidity.
But some argue that testing of the new groups might raise questions that society isn't ready to answer yet.
If two people want to get married and the one tests positive and one negative, what are they going to do? Are they going to forbid the marriage? Are they going to forbid the two from having sex?
Then there's the issue of confidentiality. In Colorado and many other states, records involving carriers of communicable diseases have historically been kept under heavy security. But many AIDS service groups argue that tougher laws against discrimination are needed before AIDS testing is expanded.
If people lose their jobs, if they lose their health insurance because of a positive antibody test result, then we have major problems in this country, and people's rights need to be protected.
We heard many of the same issues discussed when there was a question about testing of blood donors. I don't think anybody would disagree with that at the present time, that we should be testing blood donors as we are.
Federal officials stress they are not committed yet to the proposals for expanded AIDS testing, that no decision will be made until after a hearing later this month. And even if adopted, it would take state action to make the proposals mandatory. David Dow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Labor Department and White House officials said today they may propose an overhaul of company pension laws. Among other things, they are considering a change that would allow companies to withdraw what they call excess money from workers' pension funds. Labor unions are expected to fight against such a change, arguing that pension fund money belongs to the workers, not the company.
The 87 Yugos are here, and people love them.
I think it's fun to drive.
I like the rack and pinion steering.
We wanted a dependable second car. It's easy to love America's most affordable new car, the $39.90 Yugo GB. And now there's even more value during Yugo's Pack for Action sale. You can get sport wheel covers, a right side mirror, roof rack.
Great!
And a 3-year, 50,000-mile extended service plan.
Wow!
All at terrific savings.
I'll take it.
Hurry, this offer won't last long. See your participating Yugo dealer today.
Lipton tea you made, decaffeinated just for me.
Lipton, you made decaffeinated delicious, just for me.
Hey, Lipton, you made decaffeinated just for me.
Great tasting Lipton decaffeinated tea. Real Lipton tea, delicious and decaffeinated, just for you.
Lipton tea you made, decaffeinated
just for us.
For many years, El Salvador has been one of the poorest countries in the West. Now its economy is worse off than ever, crippled by last year's earthquake on top of 7 years of civil war. Unemployment runs as high as 50%. From San Salvador, Mike O'Connor reports tonight on a black market in babies, a business born of despair and the pain it's brought to U.S. families as well as to Salvadorans.
Tina Barber remembers as if it were yesterday when her newly adopted daughter finally arrived in the United States from El Salvador. She had been told the child would be healthy and normal.
It turned out that she was about 6 pounds at 4.5 months, and her hair and that was, a lot of it had fallen out, and her face had all sores all over it, and her body had all sores all over it. She was in pretty rough shape.
Maria Castro remembers too. Her 2-month-old son was stolen from her just before Christmas. She still has his clothes and his toys, but authorities believe he may be gone forever in what has become an illicit adoption pipeline into the United States and Western Europe.
For me, there is no happiness.
The Barbers, in the comfort of their suburban Minneapolis home with their daughter Desiree, now a normal 4-year-old, are linked to Maria Castro in her Salvadoran slum by what government investigators in both countries say is the growing business of selling babies to Americans.
Federal agents have spent nearly 3 years investigating the trafficking of babies from Central America to the United States.
Court records show that babies have either been stolen or coerced from their real parents, have been severely ill or handicapped unknown to their new parents, or never have been delivered to the people waiting for them.
Parents, many of whom were of limited means, were induced to deliver large sums of money, several $1,000s up to $7,000 or $8,000, to various individuals on the representation children would be delivered.
The war has brought such turmoil to El Salvador that stealing a child from a slum or forcing a new mother into selling her child has become easy. Adoptions to Americans have increased more than 300% since 1979, almost 1 Salvadoran child each day. Administrators at Salvadoran hospitals tell CBS News that last year, hundreds of poverty-stricken mothers were coerced into turning over their children to rings working inside the hospitals for about $60 a child. Police say there's almost nothing they can do to stop it.
We know that if it is profitable to smuggle 6 pounds of marijuana or a package this big of cocaine across a border in exchange for cash, it is also profitable to smuggle a baby this big.
In El Salvador, public records are often meaningless. A woman pretending to be a child's mother can get legal documents showing the child is hers by simply showing up at City Hall. So the American Embassy investigator in charge says the documents he examines may not mean anything.
So what you have is simply a piece of paper which says, this child belongs to this mother, but you can't be sure that
Exactly.
it's true.
Adoption experts in the United States say there is no way to be sure how many mothers have been victimized. But authorities in both countries say that because so many Americans are desperate to adopt and conditions in El Salvador so ripe for exploitation, chances are slim of controlling the illegal baby connection. Mike O'Connor, CBS News, San Salvador.
Moscow announced today that the son-in-law of Leonid Brezhnev has been arrested and charged with taking bribes in his government post. Brezhnev's associates have been the main targets in Mikhail Gorbachev's current drive against corruption and waste.
Introducing Medipren when your body hasn't got time for the pain.
Haven't got time for the pain. No, I haven't got time for the pain anymore.
Medipren has ibuprofen, the prescription ingredient recommended by doctors 2-to-1 over aspirin for body pain, including minor arthritis pain. And it's safer to your stomach than aspirin.
I haven't got time for the pain.
When your body hasn't got time for the pain, new Medipren from the makers of Tylenol products.
Give me some raspberry.
You'll
go wild over Riunite Royal Raspberry. The taste of raspberry is a natural Riunite, not a watered-down cooler. And try natural peach.
Hey, I don't worry about getting the dentures coming loose blues.
Fixodent and forget it. Fixodent helps fix loose spots for a strong hold that lasts longer than any leading cream. Use Fixodent and forget it.
Peanuts! Get your fresh roasted peanuts!
Mom, Harry, wait for your sister! We must get some!
Remember getting Planters nuts fresh from the roaster.
No, the ones with Mr. Peanut.
Just one whiff, and you couldn't resist them.
Told ya.
Well, today there's a snack that's just as irresistible. Planters Honey Roasted Nuts. They're sweet enough to please and just salty enough to tease. Planters Honey Roasted Nuts. Mr. Peanut does it again.
You might want to drop in on the Gem Show in Tucson this weekend and dream. Dream of what might have happened if you dropped in just a year ago. CBS News reporter Harry Smith has the story of Romancing the Stone.
In the back room of a suburban Dallas jewelry store, a star was born this week. The world's largest star sapphire was cut, sanded, and buffed into a one-of-a-kind wonder. A year ago, this rock was purchased from a box of rubble at an Arizona gem show for $10. Its buyer knew immediately what he had found.
Yeah, it would be like finding a Rembrandt in your attic. I think it's as rare as sin, Steve. This is nothing like it in the world.
It was worth $2.25 million in its rough state, and Wettstein decided to risk making it worth even more. Gem cutter John Robinson was given the task. It took him 67 hours to make the rare rarer.
And gemstones are like children. When you cut one and nourish it and bring it to life, you just don't forget it. I certainly won't forget this one.
Wettstein's year-long romance with the stone will soon be over. It goes on sale this weekend at the same gem show in Tucson where it was discovered a year ago.
Kind of gives you a little special place. And when you know that you're going to sell that and give that up, it kind of jerks at you a little bit.
Finished, the stone called the Life and Pride of America may now fetch more than $6 million. And this time, it will be the star of the show. Harry Smith, CBS News, Dallas.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather, thank you for joining us. Good night.
You know, I've played a lot of roles as an actor, from a cop to a country singer. But in real life, I don't play roles. I do what works for me, whether it's my clothes or my credit card. And I don't carry my MasterCard for show. I carry it because it gives me all the possibilities and leaves the choosing to me. Possibilities and personal choice. That works for me. MasterCard. I choose it because I use it. MasterCard. Master the possibilities.
You know, people used to think what made a great raisin bran was just a couple scoops of raisins. Today, people want more. Post Natural Raisin Bran uses naturally sweet raisins. They don't sugarcoat them like some other raisin brands do. Taste the natural goodness of Post Natural Raisin Bran.
What do pharmacists recommend most for minor arthritis pain? Not aspirin, not Tylenol. It's Advil. With a non-prescription strength of ibuprofen, the medicine in the prescription brand Motrin. For hours of relief, take Advil.
Woo-wee! If you've been waiting for some really big news in 4x4s, your waiting's over. Mazda's got one fantastic new 4x4. And Mazda's loaded up SE5 is also priced close to other people's stripped down 4x4s. I'll tell you, it's the best handling 4x4 I've ever driven. And I've been driving 4x4s ever since Hell, never mind.
Tomorrow's War on Cancer. Will new weapons fighting old battles bring victory at last? Dr. Bob Arnott with a special series tomorrow on the CBS Morning News.
This is CBS.
The TV8 News, live at 6, next.
Can you save money and get better control with Eradicane? Ask John Hoffman.
I switched from lasso and saved about $3 an acre, and I got great control.
You'll get better grass control at a better price than Dual or Lasso, like Bob Olson.
The Eradicane saved me $3.50 an acre and gave me better performance than lasso.
Let's meet Gene and Nancy Youngquist.
Compared to Dual, Eradicane can save me $3 an acre.
Save money and get guaranteed control with Eradicane.
He is right, you know.
Switch and save with Eradicane.
There's always good news at McDonald's, but now it's free with any breakfast order of $1.69 or more. McDonald's gives you your choice of the Des Moines Register or USA Today as a breakfast bonus when you buy a delicious breakfast combination. Give yourself a head start every weekday with the great taste of breakfast at McDonald's and get a free newspaper too. Get your good news at McDonald's.